Welcome to this Creative Instinct podcast production made for the Cambridgeshire Recovery Service, one of a series made by people navigating their recovery journey, driven by people who have been there and recognise the way.
Well, my last podcast was shortly after I came out of rehab, and I was in a state then of almost euphoria that I thought I'd finally cracked this thing and I've beaten the demon and my life was going to be wonderful. But looking back now on those, I'm 2 years and 7 months clean now, and looking back on that period, I was very naive at the beginning about what happened and where I was, and I was actually in a fragile place and didn't know it. Keeping myself safe in those early days was it's very difficult to know exactly one thing, to pinpoint one thing that kept me safe. But I think the two most important things was to avoid any situation where alcohol was going to be present. But by far the most important thing was connection with the community that I'd built up in that time of people in the same position as me. I think without that I would have relapsed. I'm sure of it. I think what I found is that amongst that community are the most honest, decent people I've met in my life. And I heard about it. I read about something a long time ago. It was called the Titanic syndrome. That the people that survived the Titanic disaster formed a bond that was completely unbreakable. People from all sorts of walks of life bonded in a way that seemed unlikely. And I think this community is the same. That we have faced a kind of disaster of our own making in many ways, or certainly of our own kind, and we are in a community of survivors and people who want to survive. And I think those are the people that you really should mix with, because out there, a good example is I went to my men's shed Christmas dinner yesterday. It was in a pub. There was lots of booze being consumed, but it didn't bother me in the slightest. I was quite happy to sit there and talk to people, and surrounded by glasses of beer and wine and stuff like that. And I just felt absolutely no desire whatsoever to drink those things. But it's taken a long time to get there. And how it has happened in the last 2 and a bit years, I don't know. It was so gradual that I can't put a particular time and date on when it happened. But certainly it was in excess of a year. That was my position. That it took me that long before I was comfortable to be in a drinking environment without getting the EBGBs. The question of why I ended up where I did end up is obviously very important, and I think I really started looking at it when I was in rehab. It was a very interesting experience because they take you apart, they really do, and you don't really notice them doing it. You're not even aware of it, but they take you apart and get you to think about things that you've tried not to think about, things out of your past that you don't understand just what a huge influence they have been. And it's confrontation against those things that it really has been the most important thing. Facing up to the situation I had as a kid and as a teenager. Being realistic with yourself, and instead of hiding from things, say, this happened. It happened in the past. There's nothing I can do to change it. All I can do is live for today and tomorrow when it comes. What happened in the past happened in the past. There's nothing I can do about it. But it has been a gradual process. Rehab started it, and I think I've continued it for the last couple of years. And I now look at not just what happened to me, but everything that's happening on a day-to-day basis. I look at it now as in a different way. I look at it in a different way. I used to be very bad-tempered and grumpy, and I suppose I still am to some extent, but I used to lose my temper very quickly, I was once described by a builder as Mr. Angry when he came round to do some work and he'd been a few days late. Well, now I just let things go. And I don't know where that's come from, but I just let things go because I know losing my rag and getting upset and shouting and yelling and demanding this and that and the other actually achieves nothing. All it does is upset me and makes me miserable. And I think to myself, why bother doing that? It doesn't gain anything, so just don't do it. But this has been such a long process to learn. You know, I'm very old. It's taken me, you know, I'm what am I now, 72, and it's taken me most of my life, or the last few years of my life really, to learn this, which is bloody ridiculous. During these last 2.5 years, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I co-host a pre-rehab group and various other get-togethers, and I tell people, or have been telling people, that the whole process has changed me considerably. But just of late, I've been thinking, I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure I have changed. I think what's happened is I'm now finding me. It's taken me 7 decades to find me, but I think that's what's happening now. I haven't changed. It's just that the me that I thought I was, the me that I presented to the world, the me that I thought everybody wanted to be, was never me. And I'm still finding out who I am. It's a very strange process. At times I just get quite bemused by it, that I think, is that really me? Do I really think that way? But yes, I do. I think being honest with yourself, and this is something I tell people who are in the process of getting into recovery, is being true to yourself is where it starts. There's a poem we were shown in rehab called The Man in the Glass, and I still read that now occasionally, and I push it to all the clients because it is the most important part of this process. And basically what the Man in the Glass says is you need to find a mirror, look in the mirror, and that's the person you have to answer to. Forget everybody else, they don't matter. The only person that matters is the one looking back at you from the mirror. And that is a starting point. Before I got clean, I think mentally I'd given, well, I know mentally I had given up. I did not believe it was possible. I'm sitting in a room where I did most of my courses, and I'm looking at the chair I used to sit in, and I remember the facilitator of the meeting telling me that there was a possibility of me getting clean. It was highly likely that I would if I worked at it. And I got so angry. My fists were my hands were in fists. I was clenching my teeth. I was so angry because I refused to believe it was possible to ever get clean. Absolutely impossible. And I snarled at people who even suggested that. And now I find myself doing the same thing, telling people you can get clean. And I look at their reaction and I think, I know that reaction. It is, the trouble is when you're in deep addiction, you're not thinking clearly. You might think you are, but you're really not. And you can't see the wood for the trees. You can't see the reality of what can be and what will be if you work at it. In fact, it's almost kind of like the disease is feeding itself. It's trying to stop you. And we do have this kind of idea of like a devil and an angel on your shoulders, one telling you to drink, one telling you not to. I think that's an interesting metaphor. But I think what happens is that when you're in deep addiction, the angel doesn't get much of a voice. But when you do get clean and you look back and you think, yeah, you can do it, but it's very, very difficult to persuade people that it is possible. I've looked people in the eye and said, yes, you can do it. I was doing it Tuesday. And you could see this look in their eyes that, why are you giving me this bullshit? Why are you telling me these lies? You can't think straight when you're actively using. You can't, even though you think you can. But you have to believe. You have to find somewhere within you the belief that you can get out of this. And I've always been a very private person. Even talking about things to other people was extremely difficult for me. But that's what I've had to do to get clean. And now people can't shut me up. It's a kind of cathartic thing. It's a release when you let go of all this pressure that's inside of you. You think you're alone. You think you're the only person with problems. You think you're the only one that's got the particular problems you've got and that you can't ever solve it. And then when you start getting involved in the community, you realise, I'm just like everybody else. They've all got problems. Everybody's got problems. This whole thing about mental health, this is something that's come to me in the last few months, about there's been an increase in the number of people who are reporting mental health, and it's getting more and more widespread. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm beginning to think that everybody has some degree of mental health problems. It's just the degree of it rather than the existence of it. People who've had trauma in their lives are often extremely defensive and hide behind their particular wall. The purpose of the function of the whole process all the way through is to get you to come out from behind that wall and be honest with yourself and with others. And it ain't easy. It isn't easy. Anybody who tells you it is lying to you. But it is so worth it. On the 18th of April 2022, I was determined to end my life because I couldn't face another day being the same. I'd given up all hope. I just could not see a way out of it, and I refused to believe that it was possible to get out of it. But I was wrong. I've lived through this, I've come through it, and I've learnt to be me. And for those of you who are beginning this process, can I please ask you to believe me when I tell you there is a way out, there is hope, there is a way of dealing with this. It's hard work, it's painful at times, but you can do it. And most of all, it is worth it. It is so worth it. Good luck, everybody.
Your story can help others, and we'd love to hear it. Wherever you've been, wherever you are, how you got there. Whatever, it's up to you.